grounds of refusal for trademark registration in India, and this is the foundation of trademarks law. So, if you understand this topic properly, then you've understood trademarks. So, please pay attention and please attend the classes. Okay, now take out section 9, which talk about absolute grounds for refusal of registration. See, our Trademarks Act does not tell us what trademarks can be registered. It tells us what trademarks cannot be registered. So it lays down the grounds of refusal of registration. So whatever trademarks do not fall under any of the grounds, they are registrable. It means that. So we have two kinds of grounds. We have absolute grounds and relative grounds. Absolute grounds are given under section 9 and relative grounds are given under section 11. These two are very important. You should remember all the points. Sequence is not important, but you should remember all the grounds. Which one is an absolute ground, which one is a relative ground. And the difference between the two grounds is that absolute grounds, as the term suggests, do not have any flexibility. They are, if a trademark falls under any of the absolute grounds, it is not registrable absolutely. There are no exceptions, there are no flexibilities. You are absolutely barred. However, in relative grounds, if your trademark falls under any of those under section 11, then there are certain exceptions. There is a scope of flexibility. You might not be absolutely barred from registering your trademark. You might get some leverage or some window of change and everything. So relative grounds are less rigid than absolute grounds. Now let's first read section 9 and then we'll like decipher each ground separately. Section 9, Absolute Grounds for Refusal of Registration. The trademarks, first ground, which are devoid of any distinctive character, that is to say, not capable of distinguishing the goods or services of one person from those of another. So, when we were doing the definition of a trademark, the second point that we came across was that the trademark must be capable of distinguishing goods of one user from that of another. The first absolute ground of refusal is if the trademark is not capable of distinguishing the goods of two sellers or owners, it will be, and it's devoid of distinctive character, it would not be registered. This is an absolute refusal. So there are no exceptions. So if your trademark is not distinctive, as we call it is not registrable. Second ground of refusal is which consist exclusively of marks or indications which may serve in trade to designate the kind, quality, quantity, intended purpose, values, geographical origin, or time of production of goods, or rendering of the service, or other characteristics of the goods and service. See, don't get confused. This ground is very easy. The first line says consist exclusively. Exclusively means only what this provision is talking about. So there are no extra terms attached to it. It says which exclusively consists of words that designate the kind, quality, quantity. It basically means if I'm a seller of rice, for example, I want to create a trademark for selling rice, white rice. I cannot register white rice as my trademark because it's directly designating the kind of good I'm going to sell. So the first, in the second line, if you see, it says the kind. So I cannot get just white rice registered. However, this section says exclusively, so I can't use only white rice. If I put something else like the best white rice, that can be registered because this means that I am not exclusively designating the kind. I am also putting an adjective with it. If I put quality, for example, so I can't just exclusively say the best. I can't do that. I can't get that registered. You might find certain names or certain trademarks in the market. The ones that I'm saying are not registrable. That means those trademarks are not registered. They are just using the trademark. So you can also use an unregistered trademark in the market. It is allowed. However, it is suggested that you use a registered trademark because then you can sue for infringements. If you have an unregistered trademark that you're using in the market, you can sue for passing off. We will come to what that is, but you can't file an infringement suit. The next is quantity. So, for example, I sell 5 kgs of white rice in one go. I only sell 5 kgs of white rice, so I can't get 5 kgs trademarked because that is directly designating the quantity that I'm using. See, why this clause has been inserted is because kind, quality, quantity, geographical origin, all these factors or parameters are very common to most of the products in the market. There must be a lot of white rice sellers that have that are selling 5 kg packets, or that are selling white rice, or they are selling basmati rice from Pakistan, for example. So you can't get such generic terms trademarked which can hamper the other people from using those words, because once you get something trademarked, you are restricting others from using that. That is the whole point of intellectual property. You can restrict others from encroaching upon your rights. So that's why such general things are absolutely barred from getting registered. So if you go to the court or the registrar with any of these trademarks, they will be absolutely refused. I hope the second clause is clear. Are there any doubts? Please stop me when you have any problem. The third absolute ground is which consists.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, here you said exclusively. So if a
Yeah.
person uses like kind and quality,
Hmm.
then it's not bad.
No, it is. They are not saying that these can be used alternatively only. They can also be used simultaneously. But exclusively, if you put any of these together or any of these separately, you are not allowed. You have to put something else which is not there in this list.
Okay, ma'am, got it.
Yeah. The third ground, absolute ground, says which consist exclusively, again we have exclusively, of marks or indications which have become customary in the current language or in bona fide and established practices of trade. Now, terms like import, export have become customary in the current language in the established practices of trade. You cannot get the word import or export trademarked. We have a lot of words that have become customary in the current language which were not customary before. So today we use the term photocopy and xerox very alternatively, so we use them as synonyms. However, Xerox was actually a company which invented the photocopy machine, and they were the legit trademark owners of the term Xerox. But people started associating Xerox with the act of photocopying so much that now a lot of people say, um, like, can you Xerox this for me? But it is not actually. It was actually a legit trademark, which has now been diluted in the market. Such words which become customary in the current language no longer can be protected. So their trademark was actually diluted in the market, and therefore they were no longer legit owners because everybody started associating them with the act of photocopying. So you lose your distinctive character in the process, and then you come under the first and the third ground. So you cannot get it registered, or you cannot continue the registration of your trademark. Similarly, the tapes that we use, the transparent tapes, so we usually call them cello tapes. Though cello was the brand, one of the brands which sells tapes. There are a lot of other brands in the market that sell those tapes, but a lot of people usually call them cello tape. Cello is just one of the brands, but now their trademark in reference of tapes has been diluted. So cello tape, like cello, is no longer a registered trademark for tapes. It has lost its distinctive character. So such words that have become customary in the current language and bona fide established practices of trade, they cannot be registered as trademarks. Absolutely, they will be refused. Shall not be registered. So first three grounds, the absolute grounds we have discussed. The first one was if it is not distinctive enough. The second said if it directly indicates the kind, quality, geographical origin, etc. And the third says which has become any word that has become customary in the current language will not be registered. Now we have a proviso, provided that a trademark shall not be refused registration if before the date of application for registration it has acquired a distinctive character as a result of the use made of it, or it is a well-known trademark. There are two kinds of distinctivities that can be there in a trademark. One is an inherent distinctivity that we are talking about in section 9 clause A. that the trademark should not be devoid of distinctive character. Inherently distinctive means when we created the trademark, it was from its very inception very distinctive. So we did not get refused under the first clause. We could get it registered because it was distinctive from its birth. There can be a trademark which, when created, was not distinctive, and I was also refused registration because of its lack of distinctivity. However, I was using an unregistered trademark for a period of 10 years. After 10 years, my trademark has acquired so much goodwill and reputation that I have acquired distinctivity through use. Through use, over a period of 10 years, I have acquired that distinctivity, though it was not inherently distinctive. Now people associated the goods I sell only with my trademark, and they and my trademark has become well known. Well known means a trademark that is more popular than other trademarks. I had explained in the last class some particular brands, like say in case of washing machines, Whirlpool, Voltas, and Bosch. All these are well known trademarks. They're more popular than other trademarks. So if my trademark has become well known, or it has acquired distinctivity over a long period of use, then I will not be barred from registering it, even if it falls under any of the three grounds. So our Trademark Act, the Indian Trademark Act, recognizes two kinds of distinctivities: inherent distinctivity and acquired distinctivity. The proviso talks about acquired distinctivity. So you can write in your bare acts only, or if you're using like a soft copy somewhere in the register, that the proviso of Section 9 talks about acquired distinctivity through use. Now, this is important because this question is also asked in a lot of exams and like competitive exams, that Indian Trademarks Act recognizes inherent or acquired or both kind of distinctivities, because there are some countries who don't recognize acquired distinctivity. They say if the trademark is not inherently distinctive, it will be absolutely barred, no matter use it for 50 years and acquire it. But India recognizes acquired also. So you should remember this. So please write it also. Now the second subsection of absolute grounds. A mark shall not be registered as a trademark if. Now there are four more grounds in the second subsection. The first one is it is of such nature as to deceive the public or cause confusion. If the trademarks are so deceptively similar that they are causing confusion in the minds of public, or they're likely to defraud the public or the consumers that are coming to buy that product bearing that trademark, it will not be registered, because you can't defraud consumers. They are the reason why you are protecting trademarks in the first place, so that they can buy your products, so you can't defraud them. Second, it contains or comprises of any matter likely to hurt religious susceptibilities of any class or sections of citizens of India. Your trademark cannot hurt the religious sentiments of any community of the country. India being a very diverse country in terms of religion, protecting this clause was very important, because there were some controversial cases that happened. So there was a manufacturer of foot mats in USA who was selling foot mats with the picture of Ganesh ji or Lakshmi ji on it. Now people step on the foot mats, and this is not acceptable in the Indian culture, that we put the pictures of our gods or goddesses on foot mats. So they were barred under this subsection. Also, there were cases where Lakshmi ji's photo was put on BD packets. That was also refused registration. There were cases where on liquor bottles some picture of a god or goddess was put. That was also refused under this subsection, because they were hurting religious sentiments. Third ground is it comprises or contains scandalous or obscene matter. Anything vulgar or obscene or against public morality will be refused under this subsection. But you have to keep one thing in mind: the obscene or scandalous matter contains in the trademark. They are not talking about the product you're selling. Please keep this in mind. It is only the trademark, the logo that you're putting, or the kind of packaging that you're doing, that should not be vulgar or obscene. The trademark. So you must know about the Mintra case that happened some months ago, So the logo of Myntra was changed because some person had filed a like suit in the court that the logo of the trademark looks like a naked woman lying down, and the court had and she had objected under this ground of refusal that I'm talking about here, and she was she won the case, and the logo of Myntra was changed. It was made more the colors were made darker, and they were made opaque. Before that they were translucent, so you could see through, but now you can't. So they use this ground. The use is prohibited under the Emblems and Names Prevention of Improper Use Act. It basically implies that of symbols like the emblem of India or the national flag of India or any picture of freedom fighters, anything that is barred under the Emblems Act, you cannot get it trademarked. So I can't get the Indian emblem trademarked, or uh, the the Ashok Chakra in the middle of the flag. I can't get that trademarked. Anything of national importance is although in public domain, but nobody can use it privately. Then we come to the third subsection, the third category of grounds of refusal. A mark shall not be registered as a trademark if it consists exclusively of, first, the shape of goods which result from the nature of the goods themselves. Now, can you give me an example of such a case where, due to its very nature, the shape is such? There is no human intervention. Can you guess some examples? It could be anything natural occurring around you, which a human has not created.
Ma'am, the shape of a dragon fruit?
Yes, very good. So the shape of any fruit or vegetable is the best example around us because there is no human intervention in that. So you can't get the shape of a dragon fruit or a shape of an apple trademarked because that's something naturally occurring. It is a result of the nature of the product. So the first ground is this. The second ground says the shape of goods which is necessary to obtain a technical result. Now give me an example of this also, in which the shape is required to obtain a technical result. The shape is for a reason. So if the shape is changed, the product will not work. Come on, try to guess. It's very easy if you think of it. When I tell you, sorry, somebody was
Caesar.
saying scissors. Okay, yes, true. It's a good example. Scissors are there. Anyone else? Okay, so the shape of tires are round because they are so to obtain a technical result. If we have any other shape of tires except the round shape, the car will not move. So the shape of a tire, or as she pointed out, the shape of of scissors, they cannot be trademarked because they are necessary to obtain a technical result. So tires are a very good example because they cannot work in any other shape. The third one is the shape which gives substantial value to the goods. Any shape which, if removed, will the product can work, but that shape gives a very substantial value to the product, meaning if that shape is removed from the product, the value will drop the value will drop drastically. Any such shape which adds a substantial value to the product cannot be trademarked. See, because a lot of people could be using um, the same shape which adds value to their products, and if one person in the market, if one seller in the market gets it trademarked, it will cause huge losses to other users because then their substantial value will be lost, and that's not fair. Now you guys will think of examples in the third clause and get back to me later because this example could be a little tricky, so you guys will think about it. If not today, you can tell me tomorrow also, but think of examples. Now the explanation is important. For the purposes of this section, the nature of goods or services in relation to which the trademark is used or proposed to be used shall not be a ground of refusal of registration. When I was telling you about the subclause on 2C, that it comprises of scandalous or obscene matter, I pointed out that they are not talking about the product, they are talking about the trademark only. That is what the explanation says. So, the nature of goods or services that you are going to sell under the trademark cannot be a ground for refusal. So, if you're selling alcoholics, if you're giving alcoholic services, or you are selling cigarette packets, or you are selling any sexual object, you cannot be barred on the ground of nature of product you're going to sell. Your trademark should be scandalous for it to be refused. These grounds only pertain to the trademark being put on the services. Your goods and services don't matter. They could be anything. You are allowed to sell anything that is legal. It should not be illegal, obviously. It should be legal, and they cannot be a ground for refusal. Now, the absolute grounds are these only. If there are no doubts, I will open the PPT and we will get into more details. Grounds for refusal of registration of trademarks under the Trademarks Act. We had discussed the definition of a trademark. It is defined in section 2ZB of the Act. You should remember this subsection 2ZB. The first ingredient was capable of being represented graphically. It must be capable of distinguishing goods and services of one person from that of another, which is also a ground of refusal. May include the shape of goods, packaging, or combination of colors. But the shape of goods must not fall under any of the clauses under subsection 3 of section 9. When can a trademark be registered in India? See, just like we did subject matter of copyright, right? This is the same. So what can and cannot be registered? So this you should definitely properly understand for you to handle if you want to get into trademark litigation anytime, or if you want to do some internship under an IPR lawyer, you should be very well versed with the grounds of refusal. That is the only section that is mostly used in all cases. For a trademark to be validly registered, it has to fulfill certain conditions provided in the Act. The Act, instead of providing which trademarks can be registered, provides for which trademarks cannot be registered. Thus, it lays down the grounds of refusal of registration of trademarks. The grounds of refusal are of two kinds: absolute grounds and relative grounds. I have a separate presentation for relative grounds, so I have not put them here. Absolute grounds are of 8 kinds that we just did. I've divided them into points. Lack of distinctivity, descriptive words. So the term that the second subclause that we did that talked about kind, quality, geographical origin, they are called descriptive words. They are not allowed. Words customary in the current language are not allowed. Deceptive similarity, where it was likely to cause confusion in the minds of public and it was likely to defraud the public or deceive the public, comes under this. Likely to hurt religious sentiments. Scandalous or obscene matter, prohibited under the Emblems Act. And 3 conditions related to the shape of goods that we did in the end: the technical result and naturally occurring and substantial value. The first one is lack of distinctive character. If a trademark is devoid of distinctive character, it will not be registered. In other words, if it fails to distinguish between goods or services of one owner from that of another. In Imperial Tobacco Company of India versus the Registrar of Trademarks, it was held that distinctiveness means some quality in the trademark which embarks the goods so marked as distinct from those other producers of such goods. The same goods and services of different users or different sellers can be distinguished only on the basis of a trademark. So when we put two t-shirts side by side, two solid black t-shirts side by side, one bears the Nike sign and one bears the Reebok's trademark, it should be so different that they are able to distinguish between both the t-shirts, although the print is totally the same. They're both plain black t-shirts. That if you put the t-shirts upside down, you cannot distinguish. The trademarks must be able to distinguish so specifically. Basically, the mark should be able to tell which good belongs to which particular brand so that the consumers can make informed choices. For example, when a consumer knows that he wants to buy a product of Dettol because he thinks this brand offers the best quality for sanitizers, but in the market there is a similar looking product with the name Deftol with the same trade dress meaning it's packed in the same manner, the same colors are used, etc. The consumer will get confused since he won't be able to distinguish between the two goods. Now the class of consumers that cannot distinguish are not people like us. We can, if we read the two packets, we'll get to know that this is not Dettol because we can differentiate between Deftol and Dettol. But we don't only focus on one section of the market for us to determine which trademark can be registered. So there are a lot of other people who probably can't read or write, or who are small children who are sent to the market to pick up some goods. It could be any class who cannot distinguish, and they probably just look at the color or the packaging and they buy the product. We also take into account those people. The doctrine of spectrum of distinctivity. Now, the whole ground is based on this doctrine, the spectrum of distinctivity. It was devised in the Abercrombie case, Abercrombie and Fitch versus Hunting World Incorporation. These are called Abercrombie factors. This is important, you should remember the name of the doctrine. In this case, the distinctivity was divided into two kinds, inherently distinctive and non inherently distinctive. Inherently distinctive was categorized into three kinds of marks. Now, listen to this carefully. The first kind was fanciful. Fanciful refers to those marks, those words which do have an English meaning, but they are not in any way related to their products. They are not random words. They have their own meaning, but not related to the product or good they're selling. So Apple for electronics, Apple is an English word. There's nothing weird about the word, but using it for electronics is fanciful. Mango for clothing, similarly. Mango is also a legit English word, but using it for selling clothing, it is fanciful. The second kinds of words that we have are arbitrary. Arbitrary includes those words that have no English meaning, that are very random in their English sense also. So they are devised for to put them as a trademark. They have no English literature meaning. So Kodak, Toshiba, etc., they don't have any meaning. They are arbitrary marks. Suggestive are those which give a hint about the product. So Head and Shoulders for shampoo, they are giving a hint that Head and Shoulders, they are because it prevents dandruff. So this shampoo is suggesting that it is something related to the head. Kurkure for snacks. So snacks, kurkure, they're a little suggestive with each other. They're not arbitrary or fanciful at all. So they are suggestive, inherently distinctive trademarks. So these three kinds are inherently distinctive. Now we have non-inherently distinctive, which basically is the acquired distinctivity that I told you about. Consumers have started associating the trademark with the product after long use. So they have acquired distinctivity. Now, this flowchart, I would suggest you, as it is, like learn it because it's very important. And if you've understood, memorizing it won't be a problem because you just have to remember examples. So that because examples are the best way to study trademarks anyway. So just go through the examples, and you can also make your own if you have any of your own. These are just one or two just for your understanding. Please make more examples. Kunj Aluminium Private Limited versus whatever Philips Electricity. The court laid down the following parameters to determine distinctiveness: extent and period of use, which extent means the geographical area in which the trademark is being used and how long it has been used. Goodwill and association in the minds of consumers. How much the consumers value your product, how much they want to buy only your product. Investments and advertisements, how much the brand is putting money into advertising their product, because advertisements in case of trademarks are a very important factor. Recognition in the trade or business circles and channels of distribution. How known or popular are they in their business circles how known are they or recognized are they in the channels of distribution, like the manufacturer, retailer, seller, chain. Relevant class of customers. See, every product has the relevant class of customers. So if you talk about luxury brands, there is only a small section of the society which can afford those brands. So the relevant class becomes only that. Not all of us can afford like Gucci or LV bags, right? So only the relevant section who can afford it becomes relevant for that class of goods. So for every class of goods, we have a relevant section. The second ground was descriptive words. Words which consist exclusively of marks or indications designating the kind, quality, quantity, intended purpose, value, geographical origin, etc. Value means you can't trademark rupees 10 as a trademark. Like it's very obvious, but they're included here. Of the goods and services are not to be registered as trademarks. Words will be considered descriptive if they impart information directly. In Hindustan Development Corporation versus Deputy Registrar of Trademarks, the word rasoi was refused registration for edible oils as it directly designates the nature of the product. You can put something else with rasoi, but not only rasoi. Because we say exclusively, we cannot use these words. In Boro's Welcome and Company trademarks, also called the tabloids case, it was observed that for a word to really be descriptive, it must describe something which was material to the composition of the article to which the trademark was intended to apply. The description must be very important to the goods which you are selling under that trademark. So if it's something random and it is not actually designating the kind, quality of your good, or it is not imparting information directly, then it is not included under the ground. So it must be very material to the good or service that you're going to sell. It must be understood that descriptive words are different from suggestive words. Descriptive words are those which impart information directly. See, suggestive words, as we just did, the example of Head and Shoulders or Kurkure, they are not imparting information directly. So, Head and Shoulders is not telling you that it is only a shampoo. It could also be a hair oil. It could be anything related to the head. It could be a clothing piece for the head. It could be a cap. You don't know. It is only when the shampoo comes in the market that you will get to know that this trademark was talking about a shampoo. So it is not imparting information directly. It is just suggesting. Imparting information directly would be if I am registering the term shampoo for selling a shampoo. Suggestive words stand on an idea which require an imagination to make a connection with the goods. So, Head and Shoulders for a shampoo is a suggestive word. It would have become descriptive if the word shampoo was used as the trademark, as now it is imparting information directly. When we say Head and Shoulders, we need to imagine a little. We have to make a connection with the good for us to anticipate that the brand must be selling shampoos. So this is the difference between suggestive words and descriptive words. The third ground is words that have become customary in the current language. Trademarks which consist exclusively of marks or indications which have become customary in the current language or in bona fide established practices of trade cannot be registered. Smartphones, Xerox, export, import, etc. Deceptive similarity. When two trademarks are so deceptively similar that they are likely to deceive the public or cause confusion in the minds of public, the subsequent mark will not be registered. So the second mark that wants to get itself registered, which is deceptively similar to an earlier existing trademark, will not be provided registration. It will be absolutely refused. Now, the Dettol versus Deftol is a real case. It happened post COVID only. So, in 2020 March, when there was a flow of sanitizers and hand washes in the market, there were some companies that tried to misuse upon the fear of the public that was there regarding COVID. So, fake sanitizers and fake hand washes flooded the market. One such case was Reckitt Benckiser India Limited versus Mohit Petrochemicals. So the defendants started creating soaps and hand sanitizers under the name Dettol. And if you see, even they have used a cross that Dettol uses, only the color is the difference. They have used the same color combination of green and white. Even the color with which they have written Dettol is similar to the blue shade that Dettol uses. And in the pictures that are below, you can see that Dettol is in a circle, green circle, and so is Dettol. So they are deceptively similar because their trade dress and the trademark both are same. They are both deceptively similar. The court had refused or they had accepted the institution of case, and they had imposed a fine of 1 lakh on Mohit Petrochemicals and restrained them from using the trademark Deftol. And all the products that were there on the shelves were all seized. So they were refused. Now, this is an example of deceptive similarity. Parley Products Private Limited versus Future Consumer. Now, if you look at the pictures, the plaintiff's product and the defendant's impugned products, they are so similar. So, Monaco and Krakow, if you speak the two terms, they are phonetically similar. Monaco, Krakow, they're making the same sound, and even the color that is used on the packet is the same. Monaco also has like flying biscuits, so does Krakow. Hide and seek and peekaboo. So hide and seek and peekaboo mean the same thing. It's the game of hide and seek, and the color is the same. This is actually very similar because the designs of the biscuit with the long lines are also the same, identical. Then Crackjack and Cracker King. They are also clearly very deceptively similar. The colors used, the name that is used, Cracker King and Crackjack, and the kind of like the background that they have on the packet, they are all deceptively similar. The plaintiff's company, Parle G, was the owner of the registered trademarks Monaco, Crackjack, and Hide and Seek. The company has its own distinct packaging for these products, and large amounts of money was spent on popularizing them with their respective trademarks and packaging. The trade dress. However, in September 2020, the plaintiffs noticed striking similarity between the packaging of their products and the products of the defendant under the names Krakow, Cracker King, and Peekaboo. The plaintiff alleged that the goods were deceptively similar to their goods and there is a prima facie infringement of their trademarks. The court ordered in favor of the plaintiff. This is a clear case of infringement of trademarks. It's very clear, there's not even any explanation required. So the court also uh, favored the plaintiff. In 2021, the makers of Oreo biscuits took Parle to court for selling similar looking biscuits under the name Fabio. Now look at the two packets, the Fabio and Oreo. The the kind of the like the alignment that Oreo has used, Fabio used the same thing. The font is a little similar. The look of the biscuits is identical. The color on which the blue color, the shade is identical. As we can see, the packaging of the goods is deceptively similar. Considering that Oreo has presence in India since 75 years and has earned high amount of goodwill and reputation, and that Fabio was introduced in the market just recently in Jan 2020, the case becomes stronger for the makers of Oreo. So there has been no judgment on this case. It was just a case wherein Oreo had filed a complaint. So I put it here just for better understanding. There is not yet any decision on this. Pentathlon versus Decathlon. So we all are aware of the brand Decathlon. It's a very popular sports brand. It sells every kind of sports, like sportswear. Pentathlon is, you can see in the trademark. Firstly, the terms are deceptively similar phonetically. They have the same pronunciation. The way in Decathlon, if you see clearly, if you see closely, the C and A are connected. The bottom of the C is connected to the A. In pentathlon, you see they have connected the T and the A. So the tail of the T, it gives rises to the leg of A. So they have also copied a lot of things. The tagline, if you see, the tagline for Decathlon is "Sport for all for sport." Pentathlon, "Sport for everyone, everyone for sports." So they have just put the word everyone instead of all. The meaning remains the same. They have clearly copied Decathlon's trademark. They have tried to uh, pass off them as a subsidiary of Decathlon or something, and they have clearly like impugned their trademark. In March 2021, it is a very recent case. Famous sports brand Decathlon has filed an infringement suit against an Indian company by the name of Pentathlon for alleged trademark infringement and also for copying their tagline, Sport for all for sport. The grounds for the suit, as put forward by the plaintiff, are Pentathlon uses the same color scheme and font for its trademark. Pentathlon italicized the same letter in the name, just like the Decathlon trademark. Decathlon Sports for all for sports is the same as Pentathlon Sport for everyone and everyone for sports tagline. The concept of the pentathlon as a name appears to be identical with that of decathlon. Decathlon Sports India also says that the suit that Pentathlon Sports, which has 3 retail stores in the NCR region, has caused them irreparable loss. Because people must have started thinking that it is some subsidiary of Decathlon. There is so much similarity between the two brands, and people must have gone to their stores, and it actually happened, and Decathlon did suffer a lot of losses. Now, this is what the effect of trademark protection can cause on your brand. Now, what did the defendant contend? Defendant rejects all the points raised in the suit. He says that the font and the color scheme used in their logo isn't similar to Decathlon's. So they say that the font and the colors used are not same. See, the color is not same, but we all know that it is just the color that is different. There are very minor differences. Otherwise, it's 85 or 90% the same. Regarding the point of italicized A in both pentathlon and decathlon trademarks, Rana, who was the defendant, owner of pentathlon, Rana claimed that while decathlon has both C and A as cursive and combined, pentathlon only has A in cursive. So they were just creating points for the sake. Everyone knew they have copied, and even they knew they have copied, but they are just trying to say something because they have to say something. Rana points to the tennis ball iconography in Pentathlon's logo in place of O as differentiating his logo from Decathlon. So they have used a tennis ball instead of O, which is making actually no difference. When it comes to Pentathlon's tagline, Sports for Everyone and Everyone's for Sports, Rana claimed that there is sufficient differentiation in the tagline due to his use of everyone instead of all. Now, you must be smiling also because this is actually very lame, this contention, because it means the same thing. You are just using a synonym. Decathlon alleged that contrary in their lawsuit and said it is deceptively similar to registered trademarks. Decathlon and Decathlon Sport for all for sport, which is also the tagline for Decathlon, with the intent of creating a subtle yet deliberate association with the goodwill subsisting in trademarks belonging to Decathlon. Decathlon's lawsuit also says that Pentathlon is clearly banking on their reputation to pass off its substandard and inferior goods as those of Decathlon's. The decision is pending before the court. But it is very obvious that who's going to win the case, considering that Decathlon is also a well known trademark. It is probably right now the most popular for selling all kinds of sportswear that you can find under a roof. So, no other sports brand offers such a variety. So, it is also a well known trademark which the court will definitely protect. The fifth ground was likely to hurt religious sentiments. If a trademark contains matter likely to hurt religious sentiments or susceptibilities of any class, section of citizens, for example, Durga on a liquor bottle. Similarly, the use of names of deities on footwear, meat products, etc., will be included herein. See, there are a lot of sections in the society that prohibit eating meat as part of their religion, or as following their religion they don't eat like some animals or some meat. So even putting gods on meat products is not allowed, because not all communities are in favor of eating non-vegetarian. In the case of Goklesh Patak versus Mangalore Ganesh BD Works, in this case, the plaintiff is a Lord Ganesh devotee, and he alleged that the defendant is selling BD packets with a picture of Lord Ganesh on it, which is contrary to the religion, as smoking is prohibited therein. Also, it is hurting their religious sentiments, which is an absolute ground of refusal under Section 9. However, court was not convinced that it is hurting religious sentiments of any community, and therefore the petition was dismissed. Now, again, this is very subjective. what the judge will think as hurting religious susceptibilities will depend on judge to judge. Probably if it was some other judge who was more sensitive about it, would have refused. Probably this judge was not. Now the time is up, so we'll continue with the rest of the grounds in the next class. If there are no doubts, I'll wind up the class.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
the pentathlon and decathlon, whether the pentathlon trademark has been registered or not, because in in the image you displayed there is a R, right, for the
Yeah, they
pentathlon.
do put an R. They do put an R, and they got it registered because you can't put an R until it is registered. But when Decathlon saw in the market that they are like infringing, so they instituted a suit. See, you must be thinking that how did they even get the registration if they were so deceptively similar? So what happens is, this happens for all kinds of IPRs. It could be copyright, or it could be trademark or patents. So when you go to the trademark or copyright office and you go to the registrar for registering it, it has happened a lot of times that trademarks that should not be registered, they allow it. The registrar allows it, although even he has to go through all the grounds and he has to decide whether it should be given registration, but they are still allowed. That is why infringement suits happen. That is why there are grounds for infringement, because if the registrar wrongly registers a trademark, the plaintiff can institute a suit on the same grounds. So the registrar had wrongly provided registration, and that's why it was challenged in the court, because it was not refused at the registration stage. So it happens in all kinds of IPR. There are so many patents that get registration or patent rights, and then they should not be getting the patent. So there are infringements or oppositions that happen later because the patent controller did not refuse it at the registration stage, and same happened here. It happens a lot of times. It's very common. Are you clear now?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, guys, if there are no more queries, I'll wind up because we are already